Well, the news of the death of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il last weekend has been at the top of the news agenda over the past few days, and of course China is no exception. Much Western press coverage has consisted of feverish speculation on what the future holds for North Korea under Kim's apparent successor, that's his son Kim Jong-un. However, in China, reaction has been quite different. A message of condolence sent on behalf of the Chinese government said, "We are shocked to learn of Kim's death," and it went on to call Kim a great leader and a close friend of the Chinese people. It also emphasized that Kim had carried on and further developed what it said was the traditional friendship between China and the DPRK. That's the way North Korea is usually referred to here in China. And the government-owned English-language China Daily newspaper had simply a picture of Kim and the headline, "A friend's departure." Well, that's the official line, but what has the reaction to Kim's death been in China's online community? And what do they think this will mean for the future of China's neighbour, North Korea? Well, we can cross over to the newsroom now, where our researcher, Julia Liu, has been following what's been said. Now, Julia, not many Western leaders seemed stricken by inconsolable grief at the news of Kim Jong-il's death, but here in China, which is often referred to, at least in the foreign media, as North Korea's only ally, we've seen the official Chinese government reaction has been much more effusive than from most other countries. Is that reflected in reaction from Chinese net users as well?
Well, actually, back in May, when it was reported that Kim made a visit to China, we don't actually see too much of a welcome expressed on the Chinese internet, with a lot of commentators mocking North Korea as coming with its begging bow to China again. But now that he's gone, it seems there's a bit more sympathy than before. Le Guanmin says on iPhone.com, "May he rest in peace. He's a great politician and has made great contribution leading North Korea in an unpredictable world." Well, this poster on Sohu.com agrees Chinese people have been deeply affected, but is more vague about what that means, not saying, "There has never been any foreign leader whose death has aroused such complicated emotions among Chinese people." But there are also some posters that mention another leader's death over last weekend. It's Czech Republic's first president Václav Havel, and compare it to that of Kim Jong-il, and unfavorably in this case of Julia Liu, who says, "There are some posters who said that the overwhelming concentration of reports about Kim's death rather than Havel's shows the gap in their political clout, but I don't agree. A good politician wouldn't leave his country in an unpredictable black hole with his neighbors all nervously taking emergency precautions after his death."
And Julia, I've noticed that besides the reports of Kim's death, the media here is also concentrated on the dramatic reactions of the North Korean people, the ones we've seen on TV. I mean, wailing and gnashing of teeth just doesn't come into it. What's being said about that?
Well, quite a bit, actually. We've seen lots of reports here about a Korean TV announcer who was tearful reporting Kim's death in a quivering voice. And then the dramatic pictures of ordinary North Korean people crying and collapsing in public grief in the streets, and some even apparently fainting. But China's net users seem to have quite differing ideas when it comes to assessing what all this means. Some can remember something similar from their own past. Zhang Damin says on Sohu.com, "Astonishing parallels can often be found in history. Seeing these weeping North Koreans reminds me of China in the year 1976, when our chairman Mao Zedong died. The pain has never left our hearts." But Kan Buqing is less sympathetic and has this thought, saying, "Would Americans cry in this way if Bush, Clinton, or Obama died? It's quite horrible that a man can control the minds of a whole nation." While Wu Zhizhe goes further by saying, "The psychological slavery has turned people who should have individual spirits into honest-to-God slaves who've abandoned their own emotions." While Lai Hanlin has a slightly different take on Sina.com. Some people say that it's the absolute brainwashing that resulted in these scenes of weeping North Korean people. But I think it just shows that people feel insecure about losing Kim and feel terrified in the face of an unknown future for the country. And maybe there's also some outpouring of emotions due to long-term depression.
Now, Julia, that poster mentioned the uncertainty over the future of North Korea. At the moment, that future seems to be in the hands of Kim's son, Kim Jong-un, someone few people had even heard of until relatively recently. And that's something that seems to concern people right around the world. What happens next? So what do Chinese net users think the future holds for North Korea?
Well, first of all, the series of questions asked by Wang Yizhou on Sohu.com can in some degree explain what Chinese net users worries right now. Can the new leader contain the situation and oversee the transfer of government smoothly? Will outside powers take advantage of the situation and try to foment chaos? What should China do at the moment? First, as for Kim Jong-un, Chinese net users seem to be divided into two different categories. One quite suspicious, like Ding Dong, who says on 163.com, Kim Jong-un isn't as prepared as his father was before taking up this position, and he doesn't have the authority and experience of his father. It's really questionable whether North Korea can get through the transitional period. But others' view is not that bad, and people don't need to worry too much. Like He Jingjun, who says on Sohu.com, even though Kim Jong-un might not take control of everything in the short term, there are still some loyal and reliable officials left. On the domestic side, the country will remain stable. The main danger for Kim Jong-un is from the potential threats from other countries. But as for those outside powers, most Chinese net users don't seem to be that worried either. Here's a typical example. This poster called Sui Qinghui says on iPhone.com, neither North Korea's biggest supporter, China, nor its biggest opponent, the US, want to see it descend into chaos, which will upset the status quo. So with the lead of China, the US, Russia, and Japan, the world will work together to avoid the chaos. And I think the possible changes for North Korea will be economic reform, which China has been trying to convince Kim Jong-il to do for decades, but failed because of his stubbornness. Kim Jong-un needs more support from China to sustain his power, which means he will of course listen more carefully to China on reforming the economy, just as China did several decades ago.
Well, perhaps not the worst outcome of all. Thanks for looking into this for us, Julia. And that was China Take researcher Julia Liu with a reaction from China's online community to the death last weekend of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Coming up next, China's top searches. What's hot and trending on China's search engines?